Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the Women Waken podcast.
Hi, Whitney. How are you? I'm so honored to be here.
So great to have you, Jennifer. So, Jennifer, you are a initiator, a code activator guide, and a new voice for the new age. You help activate new divine feminine leaders for a new earth. These are all some of the characteristics of what you do, of what your work is about. So, could you elaborate a little bit for because we were just kind of sharing about my audience for this show, and it kind of runs the gamut from those who are just sort of curious and first being called. I would say that we get this calling, this stirring maybe of there's something else going on at this time on this planet with this species, with me, right? That's what people are feeling. And they don't know. And often the question first comes because they're dealing with a lot of dysfunction in their life, right? It could be addiction, it could be abusive relationships, unhealthy relationship with the self. So your work is sort of that more advanced, I would call spiritual work, where you're actually recognizing some of your true essence, your true gifts. So now I'll turn it over for you to go ahead and share exactly what it all means.
Thanks so much. And thank you for the work that you do in the world and opening all this for so we can open up our soul gifts and soul mastery and open the new golden age because we all have those. What I've been shown is we all have latent wisdoms and codes that as we move into higher frequency, they start to turn on. So have you start to maybe sing, or you start to have remembrances, or you start to know things you didn't know before as you move higher with your ascension path or with your healing. You're able to then access these wisdoms that are who you truly are, not maybe this old operating system of going fast and getting in traffic and waking up with your alarm and going to work and getting your coffee and brushing your teeth, and that whole 3D routine that keeps you numb is then opening into who you truly are. And I'm blown away by the fact that I've been able to activate over 1,847 divine souls to their higher purpose. And we have a global community around the world, but it wasn't always that way. I was sitting in my doctor's office in Los Angeles, California, and I was waiting for the results to come back. And my legs were sticking to that paper, the paper on the examining table. And I was running a clothing business. I built a clothing business in Los Angeles from $100 to a seven-figure business, and I was burned out. I was empty, and my body was breaking down. I was broke and broken inside. And so, as I waited in that office for him to come back, the door handle turned, and the door opened, and the doctor came in, and his face was long as he started to speak to me. And I didn't hear anything after that. I went numb. I stopped breathing. I had to tell myself, like, just keep breathing. Like everything fell away. It was such a low point for me because what I was being told is if I kept on the path I was on, I didn't have much more time on this planet. And so I had to make a choice. And I didn't know what that choice would be. I didn't know anything else running a clothing business. I didn't know at that time. And so what I did is over the weeks that passed, I did make a choice, and I stepped off that curb into the unknown, and I walked away from everything I knew over about a year. It took me about a year to unwind. And I walked into a 6-year period of being unwound and rewound. And to here where I am today, I found some teachers. I slowed down, took some classes. I opened my body, and I started to do things for me. And I started to listen to myself, and I started to heal to now where I am today, where I can help others. And so you might relate to me. I mean, maybe you've gone through this with your path, or you're in burnout, or you're wanting to take your next step, or you don't know how. And that's that voice inside telling you. And it was telling me, and I could have ignored it, and I probably wouldn't be here today. But I listened, and I took that path that I didn't know where I was going at all. So, I mean, that's my story. And if you can relate, I mean, to where you're at is those codes within me. Now I've had the time by slowing down and learning how to open my body, and with breath and with embodiment practices, I've started to remember those things within me that help to take me to where I'm going, those next levels, those remembrances, those codes that are within you as well.
Did you have somebody that walked you through your initiation process? You said that you worked with healers. What did that look like for you? And before this sort of physical breakdown that led you to slow down and go within, were you spiritually inclined? Were you spiritually engaged with different practices, or was this a whole big shift for you?
I was spiritually inclined, but my business took my whole life. So I went to a center called Agape in Los Angeles. Some of you might know that. Met Michael Beckwith, and I was definitely on the spiritual path, but I was so distracted by my overwhelming business that I only could do so much energetically, when you're so kind of in that world. So but I wasn't in that deep place where I could really listen and really open, because 6 days a week I was in that go go go, and I didn't stop. I would go go go, eat lunch at my desk, all of that. So, and I met healers, yes, that opened me, but I had to do the work. I work with source, I work with the higher realms, I work within myself. And after I was opened, and after I learned about opening my body, then I could just take it and open further.
And then how did you begin to start having your own work as a guide, as a healer for others?
It didn't happen overnight. I went through about 6 years of nothingness, which going from what, like Mach 400, I had running shoes, I'd run around my factory, to like nothing, where I would fill my day with classes, and I had time for really deep romantic relationships, which was beautiful, that opened my body even further. And like sacred sexuality, I worked with Mary Magdalene. I work with some of the higher beings that I would work with, that, angels or your guides that come in, that we work with, that I worked with in my life. And then from there, I slowly started to do small circles of women in Northern California, but I dreaded it. I mean, I'm someone who ran a clothing business and told everyone what to do, but I had some wounds about being seen and being heard in this different way. And so I had to really, I would rather go get like a root canal than have a circle, but I would still put the flyer up. I was living in Bodega Bay, California, which is near Sebastopol, and they have a really great lineage of circling in Northern California. And the women really circle. They don't just circle on a moon. They circle for like 10, 15 years with groups of their friends. And so I really learned how to circle and gather. And I really started working through my fear and my not wanting to be visible, having that wound within me and healing that. And that took time. And I can't say even today it's not all there, but it's so much more open through walking through and slowly starting to gather women, and slowly starting to find my feet, my feet under me, and like my path. It didn't open overnight. It took time.
And you speak about the rise of the new activated divine feminine leader. Of course, this is the Women Waken podcast, and my subtitle is Awakening the Divine Feminine. So that's been a big calling for me in my work. I share my story a lot, that I kind of had this sudden, I would say it was ancestral guidance, spiritual guidance. But back in 2019, I suddenly had this flood of messages or inspiration to bring women together, to hold space for women, that there was something that women had that was needed at this time on this planet that's missing. And it was a really profound experience. So that's a big focus of mine, is that there's a balance needed right now. And it sounds like that is a big part of your work. So can you share about what it means for you when you say the rise of the new activated divine feminine leader?
Well, I feel it's the women have risen, but now they're activating, and it's new because the divine feminine has been suppressed, oppressed, and persecuted for over 4,000 years in the ages of Aries and Pisces, and now we're moving into we're in the Aquarian age, which is the age of balance. So this is where the divine feminine within all beings, men as well, they squash their feelings. They were, don't cry if you're a masculine child. It's, you're weak. And then the divine feminine and the priestesses and the priest in the temples, and the women are deemed half a person, or walk behind the man, or and it was less than. It was to break that divine feminine energy, so that creatrix, that birthing, and that power would be controlled. And so it was over 4,000 years indoctrinated. And so now we're like breaking free of like cracking out of that. But we're restoring the balance. It's not about that one will be more than the other. It's we're doing it so that you can stand next to your beloved, the divine masculine, and we can walk together. But it's about restoring that balance. And as a conduit, as the divine feminine is a conduit of the energy, she is then showing you how you can move into the divine within your life by opening your body. And you are a powerful channel, and you are a powerful being of light, and you have wisdoms, and you have abilities, intuitive knowings. The divine feminine and the priestesses or the healers or the shamanesses of every village, we're like the glue that held everything together. And we're like the voice and the like the conscience of that tribe. And it's been lost. And so now it's coming back.
And how do you see, I know you're kind of leading into this, but how do you see it actually, how is the new divine feminine rising right now? How is it coming forth? Because I think a lot of people look around our world and feel like nothing is changing and that things are hopeless and that we're stuck in this power structure that's just too powerful to break, too big to fail, as they say. And just as you spoke to, it's not about anything failing. I don't believe it's about introducing another way, introducing new elements that help to shift the way things are. So how do you see that on a sort of base level happening in our world with people? What does it look like?
Well, it is changing, and there is the old powers, they are hanging on, and the light has won, yes, but the dark, if you want to call it, or the lower frequencies that have been in control for thousands and thousands of years are not wanting to really let go of it. It's a top-down patriarchal structure that is now moving into horizontal. So that's the difference, is we're walking together like birds flying together and sharing leadership, not one telling us what we're going to feel and what we're going to be paid and what we're going to have hours. We're going to then choose together. And so it is changing. And the activated means you're now activating. You've risen, you've started to learn, and you started to open your body. Now it's you're activating your soul codes, your soul masteries, your soul wisdoms that have been within you for millions of ages, that you've initiated before you ever came to this planet. And that's what I'm seeing in women in our community that are remembering, and we're remembering our codes. We're remembering who we truly are. And their lives are shifting from not wanting to be seen, having their cap on in like our gatherings, like not talking, not sharing, to like I see them on Facebook and they're open and they're sharing and they have a soul business and they're walking their truth and sharing their message. Give me 1 year and being an activated container of light, and I'm seeing this activated divine feminine leader showing up, not just rising, but activating. There's a difference, and you're coming out in the world and you're being visible and you're impacting the world. And I'm seeing it all over in the community.
How do you think they will be incorporated more in, so because I think a lot of people feel like these are just in spiritual circles that doesn't influence the rest of society. How do you see it starting to be incorporated and be felt in different presences in our society?
I feel it's in every walk of life. Women and men are waking up. Women and men maybe who never ever thought of a yoga class, they start maybe with yoga, or they start maybe with like a breath work class like at the YMCA. They start, and then things start opening in their body and they start learning about something, and that opens something, and then they're in a corporate world and they start to work in a different way, starting to kind of like a priestess in the temple, but you're in a sacred space wherever you are. So you could be a bank manager and you could operate in a sacred way because you have seen the difference in your when you operate in that way versus just being in a linear masculine way. When you incorporate the divine feminine and you honor each person and you listen to each person and you have that cooperation, it changes the frequency of your business, of your town, of your employees. You probably retain them longer because they're actually being felt, they're being listened to, they're being heard, they're not being just told what to do. So you're having a longevity in retaining and honoring and uplifting those you work with. And those, I'm seeing it all over. It's not just in spiritual circles. I feel the beacon starts maybe in like the spiritual world, and then it fans out, because that's what we do, is we create the frequency here, like in a strong beacon of light, and then it goes out to all beings across the ley lines of earth. So everyone is feeling it, and they're activating on their level, wherever they're at.
And you speak about way showers for the golden age. So it sounds like all of this rising and this activation is about allowing people to be an example of what can be, what we're moving towards. How do you view this, a golden age? Does it mean that, because I think a lot about, well, what's going to fall away and what will remain? And does the golden age, does our future involve 9-to-5 jobs, people still feeling that they have to be beholden to earn a living? Because that phrase itself never sits well with me, right? The idea that you have to earn a living. I mean, maybe I'm too, out there, but I always have this vision of, bringing it back to that we get more back to the elementals of life, and not having to, again, have this masculine focus of just producing and pushing ourselves to innovate and growth and all of that. And then when I see that shift, I wonder, do corporations fall away? Do the way that, because it seems like in the golden age, the way we do everything changes. Families, relationships, education, work. Do you see that? Or what's your vision for the golden age?
I see it. It starts from within you. First, it's not a destination. It starts within each person's heart. As we open up these frequencies, we open up the magnetic fields, and we open up that possibility of stepping into a life that is heart-centered, not mind-centered. So it's Piscean was you led with the mind, information age. Now we're leading with the heart. Now that's different. That's not everyone's there yet, obviously. You look at the newspaper, but it's also a lot of that's manufactured, but that's a whole nother conversation. But we lead with the heart, and that opens the frequency so that you can, if you just in this moment, just in this present moment, just tap and just drop into your heart, and all the problems or chaos or things happening in your life, they all drop away. And this is the frequency you call in your life by, when you are in these frequencies, you call in that future by the frequency that you carry. We already know that from the heart coherent field, like work of Joe Dispenza and Heart Math Institute. So when we open that, that is the next level. That is the golden age. So as the golden age opens, you will want horizontal corporations, if there's even a corporation needed. You'll want food for everyone. You'll want water, that everyone has pure water to drink. It's not going to be like, well, if you can't afford it, too bad. I get water, but you don't. That's not going to be the mindset, because if you live in this frequency, it doesn't align. And so it's as we open this more and more, and as we move into it, the Aquarian age fully activates in 2025. So, it fully, with a buffer period, because we're in a buffer period right now, Piscean Aquarian, and then it fully activates in 2050, the Aquarian age. Like we're full. So we're in this in-between world of Piscean Aquarian, of mind and heart, of old and new. And so for right now, it's opening that space within you, because if you can open your heart and you can do more heart-led ways of being, you give everyone permission to do the same. It's the collective consciousness that you tap into, and it's real.
Right. And how do you think that people become aware of that? Because right now it seems, I believe it's inevitable. I think it's going to be a shift, but there's going to be some people who are resistant to it. There's a lot of people now who do not align with any of what we're saying. They'll say this is ridiculous. This is, people who are out of their minds, which I'm happy to be out of my mind. I think it's important to get out of your mind sometimes so you can actually just feel and tune in, because just as what you've spoken to, I've felt that most of my life, more so recently, that we're going to reach a day where we realize that competition is not what life is about, and that pushing forward and having this hierarchy system hurts all of us. And of course, that's connected to the idea of oneness, that if you're suffering, then I'm suffering. It's collective. And that brings another issue that we don't have to get into, but I also often think about the fact that there's so much suffering on our planet that none of us really have a clear conscience right now, because we know that there are people who are not able to live well, and people that are oppressed, and people that are hurt and abused. And if that's true for any of us, then it's true for all of us, that we're all kind of, so I think that people want to deny, they're like, okay, well, I got my nice cozy position in this world, so that's all that matters. Everyone else has to fend for themselves. But I've just always felt that we're going to reach this point where our consciousness rises to the point where we recognize that wherever you are is where I am. We have to go together. So how do you see that sort of spreading further through our population?
Well, it goes out along the energy lines. It doesn't, you don't have to listen to a guru, and that guru student, the teacher student model is gone. It's not about that you're needing to hear from someone to give you the information. It's about we're all masters. I feel everyone on this planet is a master. We're all at different levels. And it goes out along the energy lines. And also, you can be inspired by someone. You can hear something on YouTube. Someone can say something to you at the store, and it just like awakens you. There's awakenings that can happen in a split moment. And then some take more time. And that you're like taking a workshop and you really are on your path or starting on your path.
Mhm.
Or you are just feeling something open up within you and you don't know what it is. And you start to feel different, and you start to you're in a relationship that might be toxic and it's not healthy, and you're like, I can't be in this anymore. I just know it's not my future. It's not in alignment. And by dropping that, you're stepping into who you truly are more and more.
Yeah. And Jennifer, I know that you also, through your work, you talk about your high priestess initiator. You speak of Atlantis, Lemuria, civilizations. Do you also align with the idea of, we might call it star seeds, but just the idea that there are other species in our galaxy, in our cosmos, who are at a higher level of consciousness, where they live in this harmonious way that we are breaking into. And so I've always seen it as that we're just a younger species in terms of we haven't learned like the higher truths about life and ourselves. And that when we are starting to awaken, some of it is inspiration coming from other places in the galaxy, but also from a remembrance of what has already existed on Earth. I align with the idea of Atlantis and Lemuria. I think that we've had more civilizations than we find in our history books.
Yes.
Right?
And I'm coming to you from the mountaintops of Lemuria in Hawaii. And yes, absolutely, there were civilizations here. This is the fifth incarnation of a like a human incarnation on Earth. And each time there's been a whole cataclysm. They've like burned the house down, and then it comes back again, and then something is seeded. And there are planetary seedings here. There's a lot of beings that have come here with codes and wisdoms to help us. And they've come at this certain special time to help activate this planet and help us to move into this next stage, because there's forces that don't want us to move into that next stage. And that's very, very real as well right now. And so it's holding that, and we have to band together and be in communities of light, and so like-minded communities, so you can have that support and that structure. And that's why we have community at our Light Priestess Temple, where you can walk together, because it's so important. You know, as a healer, as someone on the path, you can be alone a lot, and it can be really lonely, and so you don't have that support. And these lands did exist, and they're activating again, and there's temples of light. Like, I've traveled for 8 years activating portals and temples of light around the planet. I came to Hawaii to activate the Golden Temple of Light on YPO, which is holding the energy center for this entire planet for the next million years. It's in the light form now, but it will be, you know, at some day, I don't know when, you'll be able to walk into it, but it's where every ascended master that works with this planet comes into this temple to work with this planet and work with the energy. And it's held, and it holds all the codes of this planet in one place. And so things like this are happening on the planet. And I know it might sound fantastical, but that is, in my life, as real talking to you is as real. That is as real for me, because I can see it. I've walked in it. I've been in it. And I've traveled across the world to be here. So it's really interesting how they're all coming up. They're also activated and awakening again, just like the Divine Feminine.
Yes, which is very exciting. And it is so important to have communities. And it's so wonderful that people are coming together more and more in these communities, where they are recognizing that they hold this truth together. They hold this intuition, this calling, whatever you want to call it. And so they join together. And I find that important, because I know when I first started having these concepts, I wasn't really sure why. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know if it was make believe or what. And of course, people started coming into my life just by happenstance, no coincidences. It was alignment, right? It was synchronicity. And I thought, oh, wow, maybe this is really something. So community is so important because, as you said, there are forces that are holding on for dear life, because I sort of view it as a bit of, I would call it basically maybe like love versus ego, where those who are stuck in the way things are is a very ego thing. It's fear. It's fear-based, right? They don't want to let go of it because it's given them sense of a world that doesn't always make sense, right? Our universe is infinite. The truth is infinite. It's big. And that can be exciting or it can be terrifying to some people. So I feel like on this planet, what we've done is try to make very rigid structures around what life is. And if anyone tries to blur those lines, people don't like it. And then there's also those that you've spoken of who have learned how to benefit from people being in fear. Because when people are in fear, if you offer them what they see as comfort or validation, then you have control over them. And that's what I see on our planet, is people who are mostly controlled by fear, and those who have learned how to do that. And the more of us that come together and recognize that it's an illusion, that we're controlled by anybody, that we're much bigger than what we're told or any governmental or corporation structures, and that the greatest wisdom and gifts that we have come from within. We don't need anybody else to tell us. So Jennifer, when you speak of helping others to connect with and work with their soul gifts and their mastery, that's such a beautiful thing, because I think the other thing we have in this world is people think that they are worthless. They think that they don't have it, they're not special, that they don't have anything, right? We're such a society of externals. We look to other people and we say, wow, they're famous and they're wealthy and they have prestige, so they matter and I don't. I don't have a very impressive job or education, so I must have nothing to give. And it's such a falsehood. And it seems like the work you do is to help people recognize that you absolutely do, no matter who you are. If you are here on this planet now, it's not for no reason, right? It's not like you just showed up here. You are here because we are at this phenomenal turning point in our humanity's history. So, and everybody is needed here because we wouldn't be here otherwise, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. Very powerfully said. I don't know if anything can add to that. That's really beautiful. I feel, yes, everyone is a master in their own right, and you don't need to be a famous celebrity to share your gifts. Like, what is something that you love to do that you would do for free? What is something that lights your soul up? Where are you at your best? What are you doing in that moment? Because that's your gift to the planet. Because if you're in that joy and that bliss and that heart centered, you are gifting your magnetic field to the planet. And the more you can be in that, the more that you are opening up the golden age. And it could be petting your dog, it could be walking on the beach, it could be holding your baby, it could be um, wearing that new dress that you just bought and you weren't sure you wanted to like put it on, and you put it on and like, and you just like, I wanted to save it for a special occasion, but no, wear it. Give yourself a beautiful flower petal bath. Give yourself ritual bathing. Anoint yourself with some beautiful oils. Spend 10 minutes with yourself and open up your body and give back to yourself. And what do you love to do? Because as you open up, then you are stepping into who you truly are, and your gifts and masteries will start to open because your body will start to trust you more. And it will start to say, well, she's ready. She's honoring me. She's slowing down. She's intuitively grounded, and I think she's ready. And then these codes start to open within you and revealing deeper levels of who you are. 100%. Every single soul on this planet, you and me included, have latent soul codes that have not yet been activated. So the higher you can go into frequencies, get yourself into maybe some beautiful circles of women, or into, like, if you like to sing, into like a choir, or into just opening up and having meditative space in the morning, taking baths, anything that puts you in that space, riding a horse, like whatever it is. And then keep doing that and start to see what opens in your body as you're opening and you're giving yourself these higher frequency where you're stepping into that magnetic field, because the heart coherent field goes out, it's 9 meters, and it turns on, and it's energetically to the ends of the universe. So when you think of someone, like, why do they call you? Is because they can feel you energetically to the ends of the universe. And physically, it's a 9 meter magnetic field. That's how you manifest your life in, is through this magnetic field.
Beautiful. And can you elaborate a little bit more on soul codes? What are those? What are those that we have within us? What are those soul codes?
Soul codes, like, everyone has dormant codes within you, and these are your original soul codes. So you might, if you might not everyone believes in past lives. I do. And I've seen you've had, most souls have had 1 to 8 million or more past lives. So in these lives, you've been initiated, you have wisdoms, you've mastered ways of being. Like, why does someone come in and they're a world-class tennis player, and then someone comes in and they're kind of just beginning? Well, in my opinion, that person's probably played tennis in like 10 previous lives and they've mastered it. I happened to play tennis when I was younger, and I was like, how are they so good? Like, how? And I was, it took me time to get my forehand and my backhand and my wrist strengthened and all that. And, then you see the Williams sisters and it's like, what? you know? And so it's like, I feel, so that's just kind of like just an example, but you've been initiated and you have wisdoms that you've brought into this life. Now, this life, you might not have a safe container, your family system. You might have had a difficult upbringing. You might have had an alcoholic father or mother. There might have been abuse. So you might have seen angels, or you might have seen things and then you shut it down. You got made fun of. You were shamed, or you just didn't feel safe, and so you shoved it all down. And so, or maybe not. But then as you get into more activated containers of light, or more higher frequencies of circles or communities that really honor you and walk with you and believe in the same things you believe, you start to feel safe again and you start to open. And then these soul codes, the original soul codes that only you carry, you only have had these initiations, not anybody else. That's why you're so needed, because you are a facet to the whole, and your codes and your wisdoms are needed. And as you feel safer, and as you feel you feel more open, and as you start to relax and move into pleasure, not into fear and flight, but into pleasure, you move into the parasympathetic from the sympathetic nervous system. You open that. These start to come on and activate within your life. I've seen it within my life. I can now channel for people. I didn't know how to do that 5 years ago. I don't even need to go into the space. I can just start seeing things in their life. And that came on through opening these codes. It just came on in my life, and it's a gift now that I can help others. And I also channel. And my channel, I used to have a mandala, and I'd have to put my roses and my crystals, and when I went to sacred sites, I'd have to have all it set up, and it was very, like, I had to have all of it set up or I couldn't channel. And now I just sit down and I just open it. Like, it's just so relaxed now, because I think I've opened more and I've relaxed into it more. So I've seen people in our community release karmic ancestral pain. I've seen illnesses go away. I've seen complete new ways of doing business open up on their business, and I've seen healings come into their bodies. And it's just because they started to be in these fields of light, and they started to open and relax, and by continually being in that, it's not just like a one-time thing. By making it kind of a way of life and a way of being, you start to open these codes within you, and you live a life a year before that you don't recognize. It's amazing.
It does sound incredible. And it does seem to be just sort of like an unfurling. I think a lot of people expect that, well, we are a pretty impatient species at this point. So a lot of us are like, okay, well, I should be some sort of magician once I start like trying to do my spiritual work and meditating for, a few minutes a day. But it does take time, right? Like, these things kind of seem to come online or open up in their own time and just like you're describing, what I love about what you're saying is that, again, we're so connected to externals. So it's hard for us to imagine that, in part, some of us just being here on this planet is all we have to do, because just like you said, we're emitting this energy. Once we align with our soul codes, So we don't have to actually, it's not always about doing something. We very well might end up, just as you said, becoming, coming online with different healing modalities, or coming into community and helping others, or being a part of something. But the biggest thing is just our presence, right? Once we've started to activate.
Yes, your presence is the most important thing. The doing is secondary. If your presence is off, there's no reason to do your soul business or your sacred work if you're stressed about it, or you're tight, or you're sending out nervous energy. Um, that's not the new age. That's not going to bring in your dream clients or the life that you're really wanting, because you're a match. You're a co-creator of the quantum field, and if you are emanating that, that's what you'll get back. And so it's by opening that presence and that beingness is truly the golden age. The doing is secondary.
And it's going to be so wonderful when more people can truly embrace that, because it's one thing to hear it. It's one thing to work to understand it, but to actually come to know it will truly change, because then we can release a lot of these feelings of unworthiness, of not good enough, of having to prove our worth and our value. I know that's something that I speak to a lot in my show, because that's what I've experienced, is believing that because of certain things that did or did not happen for me in my life, that I do not have the same things that other people have to be loved, to be of value, to be of worth. But those are such misconceptions. It's almost hard to fathom how we even got to that point. We are sacred beings. We're part of the universe. How did we come to believe that we are nothing? That we are, most of us seem to believe more sort of a baseline, again, sort of unworthiness. And it's such a tragedy. It's so sad, yet it's inevitable that we will remember, because we'll always come back to the truth of what we are. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, it sounds like the age of Aquarius is when we really, like, it really starts to accelerate, that we're not going to waste our time anymore with these falsehoods.
We aren't. The more that you come into who you are, the more you come into presence, the more you center, you're not as swayed by trickster energy or falsehoods or, marketing techniques or fear-based
Yeah.
scarcity marketing techniques. You're going to see through them. But if you get off center and you're in that flow, I get off center too. I get where I'm going too fast, and I forget to do my morning practice, or I don't have time for it. And then I see the difference. And so it's like coming back into that so that you can be that presence, because that's all that matters. And I was working with a healer, and he said, your exhale is all you need. If you can lengthen your exhale, that is going to keep you in centered. And I'm like, well, that wouldn't help with the breathwork crowd who have all these like fancy breathwork. He's like, yeah, well, you can't sell a long exhale. But that's truly, if you can just lengthen your breath, that's your prana, that's the crystal light coming in. And that's just one way to know, if you have really shallow breaths, that you're probably in a like a more sympathetic nervous, fear and flight situation. And if you slow it down, you open into pleasure and into creativity.
That's such an important thing to remember. It's wild how some of us aren't even aware of our breath throughout our day. And it's the most important thing that we do. We got to breathe. And it can, again, we're in such a hurry so often that I do that sometimes. I'm like, I don't have time to chill out. But I've learned to make time for, if you can just take some space for some breathing, it literally changes your whole demeanor in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Jennifer, I appreciate you so much, and the work that you do, and speaking to these very important points and concepts that, again, it's not fully embraced. So it's still, I found it's changed my life a lot to step into this. I've lost some people in my life who don't feel connected with this, and that can be challenging. Yet, what I often recognize is that it's a big difference, though, than a few centuries ago, when if you did speak of these things, you would be hurt.
Yes.
And persecuted and killed. And we're not totally there yet, but we've come a long way where we can, especially those of us who are in places where we do have free speech, we can speak to this and be relatively safe. So I always applaud those who are speaking to it, because I believe that's how it starts, right? We
Mhm.
never know where our words might land, especially when we open ourselves up to mediums such as radio and podcast. Because just like you said, somebody might just hear one little thing and they'll say, I've kind of felt that way, or I've kind of been thinking about that. That's interesting. And then it can move them along their path to tap into their soul gifts, activate their soul codes, move into a place where they feel their true worth and their gifts coming forward. And that's when life gets fun and exciting, which is what it's meant to be.
It is, and it's a
Yeah,
journey, and we're here to learn and relearn and share our gifts and help open this new age, however that looks. And everyone has their own unique soul gifts and path and mastery to do that.
absolutely. Well, Jennifer, again, thank you so much. Would you share with us how, for the listeners, how they can find you, how they can connect with you and work with you?
Oh, yeah, you can find me at lightpriestesstemple.com. That's our webpage and our portal. And you can find me on Instagram at Jennifer_Ashira Ra. And we have a membership, and you can walk with us and be in a community of light and open your soul gifts and masteries.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Much love.